Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri from BiancoLand, and today we're going to talk about nightmare number 2. So fingers crossed, so far, I think these are going to be the only two nightmare pieces that we had. The first one was my contractor canceled, couldn't do the concrete work. The second piece was I had to go out and rent equipment, do the groundwork. So I rented a tractor from ProStar Rentals here in Dallas. They have been amazing to work with. I've rented a few other things for them as well. But this is kind of what's happening now. So contractor cancels. I need to get a company after I've done all this groundwork, prep and everything. Luckily, some family came into town. They're able to help me set up the forms, build the forms for this foundation, do all the rebar work, get everything put in here. And then I hired a concrete pumping company. Okay, so from the end of my driveway to the back of where this shop is going to go, it is 209 feet. I don't want huge, heavy concrete trucks driving at my driveway and just busting everything out. The concrete work in Texas, from what I have seen, is pretty subpar at best. So I know if this truck drives on here, it is going to break. It's just how it's going to be. So I don't want to do that. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to definitely get a concrete pumping company. I go online. There's a couple big names that pop up. I contact the first one, no response for weeks. I contacted a second one. They gave me a bunch of information, were super helpful. So I'm like, all right, this seems like a pretty good deal. And then I find out from my local concrete company that I'm using to deliver all the mud, there's another guy like a town or two over, and he does concrete pumping, and he has a truck and everything. So I give this guy a ring, and he comes out, I don't know, 4 or 5 days after he said he's going to come out. So at this point, I'm kind of hesitant to use the guy. But he has a giant pump truck and explaining he has to drive onto the driveway to do it. So I'm like, well, you're going to have to bring concrete trucks halfway up the driveway to reach your truck. And then you can pump from the top of my driveway over the dirt into the pad. Like, my big concern is breaking out my driveway. It's not necessarily just getting it across dirt onto, the actual pad we're going to pour here. So he's like, no worries, we can park it here. You can put riggers on the slope where I have sod that I've paid big money for to put in. And it'll break your driveway, but we'll break it right down these joints and everything that were cut into your driveway anyway, so it'll be no big deal. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to do at this point? The first company, or I guess the second company here, right? The company that responded to me online, they sounded helpful. They sounded like they wanted to do it. I figured, okay, let's give them a shot. I'll do them. I've Googled a lot of things online about, concrete pumping. And there's all these articles that concrete pumping is not as expensive as you think. That's a big fat lie. It is thousands of dollars to pump concrete, right? It's $153 an hour. And then they tack on all these other charges, which you'll see at the end here. It's a nightmare. So I'm like, all right, I'll contact this company though. I think they should be able to do it. I'm going to get a line pump, right? Because we're just going from the street up my driveway over some dirt, right into these forms. Should be no big deal. Hire the company. The company comes out. The guy that gets here is like, oh, it's only you and 2 other family members that are, full-grown men as well. So there's 3 full-grown men to pour a 28 by 40 slab. I'm like, yep, this should be really no big deal here. Not a big deal, right? Let's just pour this and be done with it. Well, the guy's like, you really need, more people. You need a crew. Trust me, I know these things. I'm like, yeah, I did concrete for 8 years, so I know concrete. This shouldn't be that big of a deal. The family members I had, they were kind of like hesitant. Like, we've never done concrete. It'd be nice to have a little bit of help. And so that guy from the company says, hey, I got a few buddies of mine that could come out, just friends of mine. If you paid them, how much would you pay them? So I remember looking at the company's website, and it said on there for extra help it was $50 an hour. So I said, okay, is it through the company? Because I'd pay you that same rate, $50 an hour, but I'm not looking to bring out people from that company because I already asked them and they told me no, they do not provide help. So, I know I can't use your employees. He goes, oh, no. They're just buddies of mine. They're done with work for the day. They're just going to stop by and help you. Just be 2 more helping hands. So I'm like, all right. Like, that's fine. If you want to bring them out, he goes, oh, and the guys, they have concrete experience. They could really help you out. It would just make it go a lot smoother, a lot faster here, right? So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be faster. It'll save us some money. Let's do it. So these 2 guys come out, and of course, it is a giant pump truck from the same company. So I'm like, I go over and I'm like, hey, these guys are not on the clock though, right? Like, they're done for the day? He goes, oh, yeah, they're done for the day. Right, just friends of mine just helping out. So I'm like, all right, whatever. Spec City inspector comes out, takes a look at everything. Concrete's delayed, I think, by an hour. We're all sitting around waiting. We go, we do the pour, and I make the massive mistake of assuming these guys have done concrete before. Clearly, from the experience, one of the guys out of everyone had done it before, but he was not that stellar. They came, they did the mud. They did a terrible job, to be honest. So at the beginning of it, the third here with this video clip and everything, I recorded some of this. I stood back trying to handle the concrete hose because that was supposed to be my end of the deal. And then the two guys I helped were supposed to help finish the concrete. Well, apparently they couldn't figure out how to get concrete into the forms. They didn't know how to level it. So basically we're mid-pour. I've got 4,500 PSI concrete coming through this pipe, which they've already watered down at this point because it's too challenging to pump apparently 4,500 PSI concrete. And we get a third of it in, and these guys are jumping up and down, and they go, hey, you're going to run out of mud, right? We've already had 2 trucks come. That should be 20 to 24 yards per these 2 trucks. You only ordered 40 yards or only a third through. You're going to need more mud. And I'm like, I've calculated this out, guys. I don't think we're going to need any more mud. Like, it should be all right. He goes, no. I said, okay, fine. Go check with the guy from the pump company here, your other teammate here, your buddy, at the end of the driveway, and ask him how many trucks have came. Like, just verify we've had 2 trucks come. Because if we've only had 1 truck come, we're going to have plenty of mud to fill this, right? Because we're only a third through, and this end's thicker. So, I mean, by the time you had 3 more trucks, give or take, to get 40 yards is what I ordered, I think 42, something like that, it should be no big deal. So go and check with them and make sure. I don't want to order this mud if we don't need it. Okay. So he runs down there, like 5 minutes later, comes back and says, yeah, that's the second truck, and it's already emptied out. It's already pumped through. We basically just have a little bit of mud left in this line here that we're slowly moving because we're waiting for that third truck to show up, and it should be here in a few minutes. Make sure you get all these trucks delivered 15 minutes apart. So I'm like, all right, no problem. So I call up the concrete company. I'm like, hey, I'm going to need 20 more yards of concrete because it looks like we're going to be short here, so another 2 trucks. And the guy goes, oh, yeah, no problem. So I'm like, all right. So we finished pouring the whole thing out. One guy's screwing around on his phone. Another guy is finishing concrete, and, as people like to say, or my dad likes to say about this, right? He's making love to the concrete over in the corner. He's finishing this concrete as a concrete expert. So people that tell you they're experts at concrete 99% of the time have no clue what they're doing. He's like trying to re-screet mud that essentially already dried. Like it cured past finishing point. So somewhat of a meltdown here on this project. I've got this, the bowl float out. I'm just floating everything super quick. Like at this point, I just want to get it level, flat. And the guy's like, all right, well, we're going to keep screwing around. I said, wait, send these 2 guys home. I'm not paying them anymore. I'll finish the rest of this up. And then all of a sudden, the whole crew just wanted to leave. Like, oh, okay, well, if we're sending these guys home, everyone wants to go home. So I'm like, all right, well, we have to get this mud into the stem walls around the concrete foundation somehow. Luckily, they had a pumper full of diesel, so we just sprayed out the bucket of the tractor, loaded it with mud, filled them all up, tried to halfway finish it. By the end of the day, I was so tired and so frustrated with the incompetency of these guys from this crew. We ended up with 2 extra trucks just parked at the end of my driveway, 100% full, with nowhere to go. And of course, I go and look at the tickets, and it turns out only 1 truck had shown up when they thought 2 trucks had shown up. So I'm stuck with 20 yards of concrete. I call the concrete guy back. He says, I would take it and, sell it to another customer, not charge you, but it's like 3:30, 4 o'clock now, maybe 3 o'clock, 3:30. I've got nowhere to dump it at for a customer. So I can take it back, but you're going to have to pay for it. So that cost me, I believe, like an extra $3,800, something like that for mud. Not happy with the pumping company in that stance. The pumpers, too, drag the hose everywhere. They break all the chairs that are under your rebar. They step on everything. I had to go back and try to lift mats as we're going. And luckily I tied in all of my anchors around the foundation into the rebar mats. So the mats are going to be thick where the stem walls and the footings are going to be. Because they're literally bolted into the wood and wired and tied and everything in. And then the mats are going to slope down and are probably sitting right on the bottom of the dirt or the visqueen, that plastic we put down. So pumping crew, I give a 0 to. The company then calls me up and tries to bill me $3,800 for the project. So yeah, pumping concrete, definitely not expensive. Most people out there doing concrete pumping seem to be not very motivated to do the work. And the guys that are actually going to do the pumping, even just the pumping part. So I I'll explain this here. I gave the company zero issues with the quality of the finishing work because I paid them personally, hoping they were going to be able to do it, but they didn't. And I even paid the 2 guys that came and helped, and I made the rookie mistake of paying the other 2 guys that came to pump extra money too, just for like helping out a little bit, right? Your job is only to do the pump truck, start it, stop it, assemble it, and all that. They also showed up 2 hours early and tried to bill me for that. Then the company tried to bill me for all 4 employees, and I'd explained to them I paid the other employees cash because they were friends. They were not on the clock. I had to argue and fight with the company on that. It was a pain in the backside to deal with. And then they tried to convince me that they pumped, I think it was like 50 or 60 yards of concrete, which they did not pump. The woman at the company refused to deduct my bill until I told her, here's my cell phone. Let me pull the number up real quick. And I'm going to give you the number of the concrete company, and you ask them how many yards I sent back. As soon as I said that, it was like, oh, I'm sorry. So you only pumped 40 yards of concrete? Yep, that's all I pumped. Then they argued with me. They backed, so the people that ran the pump truck, right, they're backing the concrete trucks up to dump into their pump machine. They backed the trucks onto my driveway, which broke my driveway out and my sprinklers. They refused to fix any of that. The lady on the phone even refused to even hear me out. She said, we don't take responsibility for anything. I explained the situation to her, didn't even care. I don't think this lady has any actual experience either in concrete, so they don't understand how the process even works. It was a nightmare, a fight. I got them down to, I think, like $1,800 when it should have been like, I don't know, a $1,200 pour at most, maybe $1,300. But a nightmare, a nightmare, a nightmare. The quality of the pour was trash, to be honest with you. The company that dumped the mud, the concrete company actually mixed all the concrete and sold it to me. They were fine to deal with, right? No complaints, nothing there. But the pumping company was just a nightmare of a nightmare of a nightmare. They broke stuff. And then when they left trash, piles of concrete where they cleaned out on top of my yard because they refused to be able to take it back to the plant, which was literally a mile down the street where they could have cleaned out their trucks. The pumping company, the guy that came, didn't even know how to clean out his machine and had to have one of the other guys that was a buddy of his pump the machine out for him because he didn't know how. Then they left all their rebar stuff. They left trash. Like, it's a nightmare. You can tell I'm already getting upset with this. It's frustrated me now for weeks because it was done weeks ago before I made this video. I will not hire another pumping company just because the professionalism is garbage. The service is garbage. The employees are terrible at this company. I couldn't get quotes from other companies. Like, I'm not going to do it. So I still have a driveway that I need to pour between my actual driveway and the shop. I just bought a concrete mixer. I'm going to buy bags of concrete and I'm going to hand mix this stuff in the mixer and pour as fast as I can. My dad's going to come up, who used to pour concrete with me as well. So we'll do this max speed. I don't know, maybe one of us will be using the mixer, one will use a wheelbarrow, and we'll try to get out at least panels and sections done as best as possible. But there's no way I'm spending an extra $1,400, $1,500, $1,800 to let a bunch of lackeys essentially attempt to do a concrete pump. Just not going to happen. So if you're a rental company out there, which I don't know, I wish you guys would just rent pump trucks, like the little line pumps, because that would have been 10 times easier. I could have done it correctly on my own, had no issues. But again, this is why I hate hiring people to do work, because they just don't do it right. So we checked all the stuff at the end. There was a slight sag in one of the walls that went around the foundation here. So one of these stem walls had a slight kind of bow in it. And so I ended up coming back with chemical bonder, lengthening all the bolts we had in the foundation with extension nuts, putting those back on so everything's Simpson tie, it meets code and everything, and then just pouring a cap on top with a chemical bonder here. And I just built wood forms cheaply and just anchored them to the sides of the existing stem walls, poured it, everything's fairly level. The floor itself, though, is just wavy because it wasn't finished very great. We didn't have a lot of time to finish it. The guys that were supposed to be knowledgeable, that were supposed to help, didn't do that great of a job, which is fine. I just kind of knocked everything down and got it as good as we can. It's honestly not as bad as it could have been, so there is kind of an upside to this. I'm going to come back, though, I believe, and I'm going to end up either polishing the concrete out, or I'm just going to get a hand grinder and sand out the high spots, and then I'm going to kind of clean it all up and do probably a nice epoxy floor over the top of all this once we get it level, and then I'll just epoxy it. So this is the update. I hope this is the last nightmare of dealing with people and being gouged by people who just don't know what they're doing, companies that don't take responsibility for the stuff they've done and kind of screwed up. Anyways, that's kind of a wrap up. That's the pour here. We have the foundation in place. We've buttoned things up. We fixed the foundation. We are ready to frame here. So let's hope things go good from here on out. So anyways, if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you have questions, throw them in the comments below. Subscribe to get more updates and kind of videos on this. I'll probably do a few how-to videos as well, or issues I had during this whole build. But anyways, thanks for watching. And as always, until next time.